Tonight, the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been extended by 2 days. Now, this comes as Israel confirms 11 additional hostages are back in Israeli territory after they were released from Hamas this evening.
In addition to the hostages being released, the ceasefire has allowed some much-needed aid into Gaza. The Palestine Red Crescent Society says it has delivered more than 150 trucks full of aid since the temporary truce began on Friday.
So back with us tonight is Javed Ali, professor of practice at the Ford School of Public Policy and former senior interiors of the experts there with the White House. Thank you for being here with us again.
Terrence and Shana, thank you for having me again.
So this seems positive at all accounts that we are seeing a ceasefire here that's been extended. Do you think it's too soon to tell if we'll see another one anytime soon?
This is certainly a positive development when it comes to minimizing the risk to civilian casualties, to allowing more humanitarian aid to come into Gaza to address the suffering that's been going on the civilian side. So on the one hand, and then clearly getting hostages released too. So these are all incredibly positive for what now looks like a 6-day window in the pause of hostilities. But there seems to be still ongoing pressure within Israel, both at the political level and probably within the military, to resume the campaign against Hamas, because it doesn't look like those objectives that Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out and other senior Israeli officials laid out at the beginning of their campaign, now going back a month, have been accomplished. So this is going to be the complexity of what happens whenever the ceasefire, or not ceasefire, but the pause ends and the hostilities commence again.
Javed, can you give us an idea of just how complicated this negotiation situation is with the hostages? There was an interview over the weekend where the Prime Minister of Qatar explained that the initial agreement to release 50 hostages was based on Hamas only being able to find 50 hostages. And we know there are many more than that, some reportedly being held by other groups. So how are officials even sure that Hamas has the hostages to exchange before they agree to further truces?
Yeah, Shani, that's an excellent question. And this is probably another really complicated aspect of these negotiations, is that how many hostages did Hamas actually control in the early hours, if not days, after the attacks on October 7th? And there's been media reporting that's come out to suggest that Hamas does not have control over all of them, and that there is some pool of hostages that are probably being held by groups like the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is not part of Hamas. There might be Palestinian criminal gangs who have control over some of these hostages. Are they physically located still in the Gaza Strip, even if under the control of these different groups, or now perhaps in the West Bank or other parts of the region? Those are open questions. And what, if any, lines of communication does the Qatari government have, or the Egyptian government have, or other third-party negotiators have to these other non-Hamas groups or organizations that have control over hostages? This is what's going to make the next round of these negotiations very, very difficult.
What are your thoughts on some of the factors that go into deciding whether or not to implement a ceasefire? Who's benefiting from having this in place?
Well, these are all really difficult decisions that have to be made, both from the Israeli side, from the different countries that are trying to intervene, either for humanitarian reasons or other reasons, and then the U.S. and the Western side, which countries have hostages and just have larger diplomatic issues to contend with. So it's such a complex set of factors that no one single country controls. And as the conflict has gone on these past several weeks now, I do think there is building domestic pressure, certainly when it comes to Israel, but now also in the United States and other countries, to either on the one hand end the conflict, or on the flip side, when it comes to Israel, to continue the fighting to achieve these military objectives that probably haven't been met. And I think as the longer the days go on, the wider that gap is between what Israel's objectives are and what other countries' objectives are. And this will just be another dynamic that has to be sorted through in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, let's talk about Israel's objectives a little bit more. From the beginning, since October 7th, the stated goal, or at least the chief goal, has been to eliminate Hamas, wipe it out entirely. And of course, that's not true yet. What progress have they made on that goal? Have key leaders been taken out, or has any progress been made?
That's another great question that we don't have a lot of answers to. I mean, there have been statements here and there from the Israeli military saying that they have targeted senior Hamas officials or they have destroyed parts of the Hamas infrastructure of terrorism, either above ground or in whatever was located underneath in tunnels or other storage locations or facilities. But what percentage of those goals or objectives have been met? We don't know the answer. And I would have to think that based on the pause that has now happened, which sounds like it's going to stretch into 6 days, that is giving Hamas a chance to regroup and perhaps withstand the Israeli campaign whenever it picks up. And the U.S. had to confront these realities in the post 9/11 world in our campaigns against Al Qaeda first, and then the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. And anytime any government puts the ultimate objective of destroying a group or eliminating it entirely, that has proven to be very, very difficult to achieve, and even against small terrorist groups. And with respect to Hamas, you're talking an organization that at probably a low level has between 30 to 40,000 fighters under arms, or at least it did prior to the attacks of October 7th. So, I mean, is that the goal for Israel, to kill or capture every single person in Hamas? If that's the goal, it might be very difficult to achieve that objective. Or again, is it a smaller subset of that? And these are all things the U.S. had to figure out in the post 9/11 eras as well.
Yeah, maybe talking about this for some time to come. Javed Ali, as always, thanks for joining us today.